Welcome to Two Nerds in the Truck, TLDR. We are at Killbear Provincial Park for winter camping.
Yeah, so this is actually our second trip to Killbear for winter camping, and it's like our fourth
That sounds
or
right.
fifth, I don't know, trip to Killbear in general. We first came to Killbear for winter camping about a year ago in February 2024. It didn't go so well.
No, it wasn't great.
So we'd actually been to Killbear before that in the fall of that year, and it was amazing. We loved it. You know, it was a bit big and unwieldy, but we loved the park, so we were really excited to come here in the winter, and things actually got off to a bad start before we even got here.
Yeah, so it turns out that the dump station is closed in the winter, and we did not realize that. It wasn't really clear on the website, I believe.
No, it was not on the website at all, actually. So now when you book a site at Killbear, there's a little warning that says, you know, the trailer sanitation station's closed. There was nothing of the sort when we booked last year. And the problem with last year was we were coming off of a trip to Algonquin and Arrowhead. So we already had a full tank because those two parks don't have operating trailer sanitation stations. Before that point, we'd been used to going to McGregor Point, which does have a dump station operative. So it was a unique situation to us to have to deal with.
Yeah, so we made a bunch of calls and
Yeah, this was the morning we were leaving Arrowhead. We found out, like en route to here, we were pulling up in like an hour or two or something and just frantically calling.
right. Yeah, we finally found someone that would do this. I think it was on a weekend too. So we paid his fee and we did tip him as well because he definitely helped us out. But it was expensive, and we had
Yeah, it
to
was
get.
like a couple $100 if I remember correctly, and we had to. It was kind of it's not sketchy. I shouldn't say sketchy because he was a big help and whatever. But when you're, you know, you just stayed in Algonquin and Arrowhead, and there are these beautiful parks, and you're having this lovely winter vacation, and then you have to arrange to meet someone with a sewer truck in a community. Was it like a community
It was,
club or something parking lot?
yeah, it was some
To
kind of municipal lot, right?
yeah, for him to take our crap. You know, like it's it dulls the magic a little bit, I gotta say.
Definitely.
So then we get to Killbear and we go to our site. Now at the time I was having really bad tendon problems. I am disabled from an antibiotic, so my feet do not necessarily work all the time. So we booked the barrier free site, and the barrier free site was not plowed, and it was kind of up a little bit of a hill. Like, and what's weird is I see it now, and it doesn't seem like a big hill. So I wonder if it was a big bunch of snow that had been stacked up or something, because we were up an incline at the time, and there was barely enough room for the truck to be up there, and we had to walk through snowbanks to get from there to the car. There's also icy and downhill, and like downhill to get to the comfort station and everything. So it was actually pretty dangerous. And kind of just between the whole thing, it was we canceled our trip.
You,
Basically, we stayed one night, but before we'd even finished that night, we decided we were leaving next morning.
right. And, part of it was we were a little disappointed at what we could really do here, too.
Yeah. One problem the park suffered from at the time, and they seem to be better about it this year, was that there is just a complete lack of information, like what's open, what's closed, what the difficulty ratings are on things. Um, Last point, that was kind of a mood issue for me because I could barely walk. So,
Yeah.
you know, the difficulty of a ski trail doesn't matter when you can't really stand up. But yeah, it was just it kind of just started out on the wrong foot from not having that initial information about the dumping station, and just kind of went downhill from there. So we just left. Yeah, basically, it was what it was. But then this year we went back in October, and October was amazing.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
like,
absolutely great. We love the park. Like you said, it's absolutely beautiful. So we
and
decided to do winter again.
well, I mean, let's talk about October. That's what I was going to
Yeah.
say. It's like, so we happened to be here on October 10th, which was that legendary Aurora Borealis show. And Killbear is a fantastic place for viewing that, especially if it's like a big show like that, because, you know, there are good north views. Um, but this show was overhead and to the south and to the north and all around. And I've got one photo where the northern lights were already picked up while the sun was still setting. Like, it was a crazy show. So that it brought the magic back for me for Killbear after kind of having it ruined at the winter one.
Yeah, definitely.
So at that, I think it was about that point that we found out that the winter camping we'd been here was only their second season. They'd only opened to winter camping starting in January 2023, so just a year before we had our not great experience. So we decided to just kind of chalk that up as learning. Like they're finding their groove as a winter campground, and we decided to give it another go this year.
So we gave it a try again this winter, and let's tell you all about it.
One thing we wanted to talk about before everything else, because this is a section we don't normally talk about, but I guess it matters here, is the weather. So Killbear is located right on the shore of Georgian Bay. And in order to get here from the GTA, you have to drive through an area that is, it seems, I don't know if it's just this year or in general, but it seems very prone to snow squalls. So after our little adventure to Mew Lake, a month ago or so? A month ago? December sometime, I think. Where we had just narrowly missed like legendary snow squalls and people getting stuck on the highway and everything, like just hours after we passed through. I was watching the weather like a hawk. And the day we were supposed to leave to come to Killbear, there was no weather called for at all. It was supposed to be sunny the whole way. There was no chance of snow. And we ended up driving through snow squalls. So I recommend being prepared with extra everything. Like have, in your car, if you're in your car, bring blankets and extra food and whatnot. Luckily, we didn't get stuck on the road. I don't know if you want to talk about driving in that. That was a mess.
Oh, it was extremely windy. It was, there was a period of a good 10, 15 minutes with extremely low visibility. So, we took it really slow, obviously.
Everyone was crawling.
Yeah,
it was interesting to watch.
Yeah, everyone was going slow. We took it nice and slow, and we made it through fine. But, it was definitely a dangerous situation.
Yeah, if we'd come through half an hour later or something, it could have been worse. The condition of the roads got pretty bad there for a while. So anyways, there's a thing called streamers, and I'd never heard of streamers before, but that is lake effect snow with heavy winds blowing the snow in from the lake. Apparently that can dump a ton of snow in a small amount of time here at Killbear. So there is a non-zero chance that your trip will get extended against your will. So again, that comes back to I recommend packing extra stuff. Anyway, so now let's for real get on to our camping review.
Sounds good.
Okay, so Killbear Provincial Park is located really close to Parry Sound. It's town of Noble or Nobel. I don't know how that's pronounced because I only ever see it in writing. It is part of the Ontario Provincial Park system, so all the booking and pricing and everything is consistent with all the other parks. It is a natural environment park, and the winter camping season goes from January 3rd to March 17th of this year. That varies by a few days from year to year. So we booked online as always.
Yeah, we booked one day a few days earlier before our stay. And then right before we took our trip, we added a second night because we changed our plans for Mew Lake.
Yeah, it's pretty chaotic. So I should probably explain that because I'm the one that messed it up. Our original plan was Mew Lake and Arrowhead, and then it looked like it was getting ridiculously cold for Mew Lake. So we were going to add a day here, and then we decided to add 2 days. So they ended up on different days.
Yeah, so there's not a lot of sites in the winter that are open, and on the weekends it gets a little more busy. So they were all booked up for this weekend, right? So
yeah, we got one site for one night and a different site for the other night. And by the time we got here, and we're hoping that maybe we could get one of the sites switched to the other so we could be on the same site, there is nothing available.
Yeah,
but it's very empty. It's also very empty for being booked solid. So that's a little sus.
Yeah, that is kind of weird because the weather is great. So I don't know why you would. I could see people booking, hoping for good weather, but the snow is good, the temperature is good. So I don't know why you wouldn't show up.
I wonder if the snow squalls got worse after we passed through and scared people off. That's the only thing I can think because it is very empty. Like I look at the whole row that says it's booked solid that we actually fit. Like they fit our trailers.
Yeah.
Theoretically, we'll talk about that in a bit. It's a lot emptier than you would guess from seeing the full campsite thing on the registration. So anyways, it is a paperless system now, which is new. I don't think it was paperless in October.
I believe it. They were paper system then. So yep.
Yep.
So if you pre-register, then you don't even need to go into to the office at all. However, there's a different park map for the winter, so I do recommend going in to grab one of those. And there's a really cute fire outside too, which is nice.
Yeah, they've got those branded fire pit thing. I love those. Like Quetico has gorgeous fire pits. I don't know, it's a weird thing to nerd out about, but I like it. Anyway, speaking about weird things to nerd out about, we'll talk about the maps and signage. So there's 2 maps available in the winter months. The first one's that newspaper format type one that you see at a lot of the parks. You can grab it while you're here. They have it available in the winter, but honestly, like, not a lot of it applies to the winter season. It's very, very much published with this summer camping in mind. Like, there's a lot of stuff about activities that aren't available and parts of the park that you can't even get to. There's no information about winter camping, so it's kind of, unless you're really concerned about what, park regulations you might break and how much you'll get fined for it, it's not really applicable. So then you get a winter map. Now the winter map is a color 8.5 by 11 sheet where the map's on one side and then there's some information about the trails on the other side. It's not great. They get some points for having it in color because nothing annoys me more than when we go to a park. I'm looking at you, Kakabeka Falls, where they give us a printout. Like if it's off season or near the end of the season, they like run out of their color ones. They'll give you a black and white printout, low res, that involves color coded elements. But when it's low res and black and white, you can't tell what's what, and it's really annoying. So they get points for that. You can actually tell where the colors are on Killbear's winter map. However, it is very low res. The key is over top of the blue of the Georgian Bay, so that's hard to read. Some of the elements don't seem to line up with other information, whether it's on the website or in reality. In general, it's just kind of not a great map. I definitely recommend downloading the PDF of the Killbear Winter Trails map from their website. The colors are more distinct. I think it's more updated because there is different information on the trails on that one versus the print one. And I have to think, I don't know, the one on the website looks like it's probably more new. And just the resolution's better. So, I mean, I would just recommend doing that. It sucks to have to go off PDF, but it's good to have that as backup, especially where this isn't the most clear all the time. In terms of the signage, so there's no winter signage in the park for the most part. The road signage is all very much geared towards what the summer camping is, so it doesn't say, this section's closed off or don't turn here or here's where you want to go. It's mostly easy to read and you can tell where you're going, though, in the summer. The only issue we had this time was, and we've been here several times, so I should have known better, but when we pulled into the park, that first turn to the right where you go into the registration office, we managed to drive right past it. We've been to a bazillion parks this year, and for some reason I had it in my mind that first road was like a maintenance road or something. And there was no sign whatsoever to say that's where the registration office is. So we drove past that, but luckily it's a loop, so we went in through the back end. It's not a big deal. If that had been the summer, probably would have gotten stuck because that tends to get really busy. Yeah. So anyways, there's that. Water and waste services.
Or lack of.
Or lack thereof, yeah. So we'd already kind of gotten into a rant about what the waste situation is here. You are going to want to find somewhere else to dump your tank. Bottom line.
Right. So for the water, the Comfort Station does have a really nice laundry room there, and they've got a very deep kitchen style sink there that you can fill up. And I didn't measure the depth, but it looks pretty deep, that if you have a 5-gallon jug, it'll probably fit in there.
Yeah, it wasn't like one of the commercial, like it wasn't like a commercial kitchen sink. It was like a home kitchen sink, but like deeper, but not big. It wasn't like a farm style one. It's kind of a weird sink. Anyway.
So if you have a really tall 5-gallon tank, it might not fit, but if you have more like a cube like we have, it should fit fine. And 1-gallon jugs would be no problem at all to put in there. So that's your water.
So yeah, and so then beyond that, the water's turned off to the taps throughout the campground. So that's another thing. So that's the only place you're getting your potable water. The any of the flush toilets are turned off aside from in that Comfort Station, I should also say. The nice thing is that the comfort station's a really easy walking distance from it's there's only like 20 sites available or something. I think they said 32, but there's not many sites available and they're all easy walking distance from that comfort station. So it's not like McGregor where you might be in like the wrong loop entirely and have to walk through several loops to get to it. And plus there's easy parking right there. So if in terms of filling up your water, it's not the most convenient, but it's also definitely not the worst. There's also a large garbage and recycling setup just outside of the main campground area on your way out. So if you're heading kind of towards the main road, not the way you came in. The only thing is that one's not really super easy walking distance, but it's easy enough to drive to, so you're going to want to keep your garbage in your car and just dump it on the way out instead of walking there, especially because it's uphill and it's icy, and we'll get to that in a bit.
Yep.
But just if it's cold, you're not going to want to walk that far. So, on the sense of iciness, let's talk about snow removal. I feel like these are going to be big rants about snow removal for all these parks now, because we should give the caveat that our first camping experience in the winter was at McGregor, so everything gets kind of graded against McGregor, and McGregor does a ridiculously good job of things.
They do,
because it's kind of like that first one sets the
tone.
Like, yeah, it does. So then it's like, well, McGregor does this. Well, McGregor can plow their campground. Yeah. Anyway, so main roads,
they've plowed well. They didn't really sand, but
no, not didn't really.
You're right.
Did not. Full stop. There is no sand anywhere in this park.
You're right. There's no sand anywhere in the park, and
which honestly might be a reason for that. It is a natural environment park, but it does not make getting up the hills very pleasant.
Well, other parks will use sand, but not salt. So I feel like there's a precedent there that yes, they can use sand. That's true.
Yeah, and we're right next to a beach, so yeah. So honestly, get some sand, Killbear.
Right, and Killbear is fairly hilly. They're not like really steep hills, but our little car kind of struggled in some spots.
Enough to be an issue. So in terms of the campsites, though, it's really, really hit or miss. So when we were driving in, we noticed that some of the campsites were like barely touched, but they had been plowed. So it wasn't that those sites weren't available. It's just that they were like really half-ass plowed. And then we get to our site and it's like plowed completely out, like
majestic.
Almost, well, it almost seemed like almost too plowed out, if that made sense. Like it was, they went to town on plowing our first site, so that was great. Yeah. Our second site.
Second site was not great.
Not great.
Yeah, it was not. So the ones that they didn't do well, they basically plowed a little strip, and that is it.
Just a straight line.
Yeah, and so our second site, somebody had been there the night before. Part of the issue was their tent had kind of, I guess the heat from the tent kind of settled down, and so it made this like a little dip in the middle of it. So we had this one little strip, and I'm trying to even out the RV to get it nice and kind of reasonably level. And then that didn't leave us any room in front.
But there's no room to the sides either, because they basically plowed a truck's width, and that's it. Whereas the other site is like there's like a landing area, and if you wanted to picnic there or have a fire pit or whatever. And there's just no consistency in how they do this, because like I said, the first one was plowed like crazy. But then if you look at some of the other sites, they've got the main camping area plowed out, and then they've got like little almost walkways. Like it almost looks like a little maze. Like they'll have one out to the picnic table, and they'll have one out to the, like it's just this whole set of little, like a hamster maze of snow plowing. And then this, like they didn't even.
Yeah, so I had to pull in. So the driver's side, since I backed in, the driver's side is right up against the snow. That way we could have a little bit of area to get out the side.
Is that why you've been coming in and out the side?
Yeah, it's not fun to trudge through the snow over there. Hooking up the electrical was not fun because of that. But that was the only logical way to do it. And we did have a little bit of a struggle to get in just because it was really snowy.
A little bit.
We had a struggle.
I thought you were going to give me whiplash. I'm going to be honest. It was pretty bad trying to get back in here. And the thing is the site is plenty big. It's rated for 32 feet of RV, which is far more than we need, because we have our RV and car in sites that are rated for up to 27 foot, and there's no place to park the car here. So we actually had to call the office and find out if we could park it at the comfort station, because there's literally nowhere to park it in our site.
Yeah, I tried to park the car kind of at an angle, a little bit sideways, and I got it stuck and had to struggle to get it out. And then I'm like, well, it's the comfort station or nothing. And luckily, the office okayed it for us.
Yeah. So, but other than that, like the park roads, aside from the sanding issue on the hills in the campground, and it's just the campground really that I've noticed that the problem with the sand
Yeah.
is because the main road's fine,
Yep.
and the parking lots throughout the park seem fine, like the visitor center in the front area and whatever. Those are all really well plowed. So
Right.
I don't know how it would be with ice though, because if they don't sand,
That's a good
because
point.
there's no ice on the ground right now. If there was ice on the ground here, this would be a mess.
Right. If the temperature got up over zero for just even a few hours, it would be a mess indeed.
Yeah. So we could talk about snow plowing for a while. Basically, it wasn't great. So, but again, you know what? If this is now their third season,
Yep.
you'd think they'd have it in place by then, but they only have like 20 campers at a time, and I don't know. I don't want to give them too much leeway, but I also don't want to be too harsh on them. You know?
They have good equipment.
Oh, they do. Yeah, they've got
They've got
at least 2 snowplows.
they've got this big tractor with the snowblower on it that they were using to plow the site next to us. And I was looking at that going, cool. Can you do the rest of them, please?
Yeah.
uh,
And
Yeah.
anyway, we're gonna carry on and on. Connectivity has been mostly good, like across all our stays, and we've stayed here and in Kilcorsi. We have great reception at the in the RV.
Yeah, we're on Rogers Wireless, and everything's been great that I've tried to use.
Yeah, the only time I've lost connection is when we're on the main road sometimes, and I think usually that was in the summer or fall or whatever, like the beyond the Discovery Center. The visitor center, I should have said this will come up at some point, but basically, you can't access the whole park during the winter. The main road that's like 6 kilometers long or something is actually gated off just past the Discovery Center. So you can turn down the road that goes to the Discovery Center, and that whole parking lot's available, but you can't go beyond that as far as the main parkway goes.
Well, next is accessibility. What can you tell me about that?
Okay, so it's hit and miss. I'm definitely coming to the conclusion that winter camping is generally not going to be very accessible. Killbear has some things good, some things bad. Basically, so the comfort station and barrier-free vault toilet are both very well maintained and plowed really well and actually accessible. Like the vault toilet is kind of on the end of the campground that goes out, like when you're leaving towards the garbage area. That was really well plowed. There wasn't a rise or a lip or anything to get up. That was actually accessible. The bathroom was in fantastic shape. Like, we have seen so many. I'm going to just be trashing Ontario parks. I'm sorry. There are so many comfort stations across so many campgrounds that are just either not accessible and labeled accessible, or the accessible toilet and shower is just trashed or out of order entirely or whatever. So I don't have a huge bar for that. But this one actually is really well maintained. It was very clean. It looked fantastic. So no complaints there. So the bad is that there's not really a lot you can do if you've got mobility impairment. Last time I was here, I was completely impaired, and I honestly couldn't get out of our campground. Really, like our campsite was just icy and up a hill and not plowed. So I mean, there was really nothing I could do there. In terms of now, this time around, I'm having a bad tendon time, but not crippling. So we're in a regular site, but there's not a lot of information on what the trails are like in terms of what to expect, difficulty rating on whether something is maintained or not. There's groomed trails, there's ungroomed trails. Some of the things that are you would think are groomed from whatever description might be out there are not in reality. And the problem is that the walking trails, because there's no way I'm going to be able to ski today. That's just the thing, right? But there are walking trails. Now, the walking trails are all cut off from the main road such that you need to walk several kilometers to get to each of them. So if I wanted to go walk I forget the name of the one that's in the day use area, I have to walk like a kilometer and a half or something to get there. The Twin Points Trail is about a kilometer and a half from the closest parking lot. And then that's a kilometer and a half long trail. So if I want to walk a kilometer and a half long trail, I have to walk about 3 kilometers there and back before I get to the 1.5. And I might have the mobility budget to do a 1.5 kilometer trail, but I'm not necessarily going to have enough for 4.5. The same with our favorite trail is the Lighthouse Point Trail. That's only a 0.8 kilometer trail, right?
Yeah.
To get to there from the nearest parking is 2.6 kilometers. So you actually have to add 5.2 kilometers to do a 0.8 kilometer trail. That's not amazing in terms of having options of stuff to do in the winter, And then I'd already addressed like the ugly, which was last winter. I think they only have one barrier-free campsite here, which I mean is fine. I think they've got more during the summer in the other campsites, and there's really only a handful of sites here. So them only having one barrier-free campsite in the winter is excusable, no problem. Not being able to get down the embankment in there because it's not plowed is bad, and it was icy, and that's honestly that's the first time I've ever felt that it was unsafe staying at a provincial park campground. Like there's been bears, there's been, bad weather, and I've never actually felt unsafe until I was trying to get down from the RV to the car or to the comfort station or whatever from that site. So that wasn't great. And then just finally, I think the map is kind of a accessibility issue. I don't have vision impairment myself. And honestly, I have a hard time reading this. Like the black is over a really dark blue. You can barely make that out. The type is very small. If they just put the key over a white background, like half of the problem would be solved. So I think it comes down to a problem that I see in a lot of the parks where I think if you have able-bodied people doing your checklist for accessibility, you're going to miss stuff because you just don't think about it. Okay, so enough about my disability issues with the park. Why don't we talk about pets?
Yeah, so the pet beaches are both blocked off, unfortunately, so you're not going to be able to access them without a really long walk in unplowed areas. There's in the summer they've got the off-leash area in the group camping. There's an on-leash area in the day use. Those also are not accessible in the winter, or at least not plowed.
Well, and not only not accessible, they're not even indicated on the map at all. So I'm assuming you're not supposed to go there.
Right. So not really a lot of no designated area for pets is what it is,
No.
right? We have seen dogs around just being walked down the road, so certainly they are allowed. They are not allowed on the designated ski trails, whether they're groomed or not, but they are allowed on walking and snowshoe trails. We're going to get to those in a little bit. As always, they have to be leashed and supervised at all times. You have to pick up after them, and of course, you have to prevent them from harassing wildlife and campers.
Okay, so parking is next. What can
Yeah.
you tell us about parking?
There's no overflow parking available, and there's a limit of 2 vehicles per site, so be aware of that. And as we mentioned earlier, your site might not really accommodate your vehicles, so it can be tight. There are 3 areas that are open in winter for parking. Those are the park office, the Lookout Point Trail, and the Discovery Center. There's tons of capacity at those areas that I've seen, so you should be fine for accessing any of those features. The main road is gated off past the Discovery Center, so parking is at the Discovery Center for anything you want to go to beyond that point.
So that's the Granite Saddle Ski Trail, the Lighthouse Point Walking Trail, and etc. Basically.
Yeah, the only thing I'll note is the Comfort Station has electric vehicle parking charging, and so they've got 2 spots designated off for that, which only leaves like 2 or 3 spots for parking for the Comfort Station. So there's not really a lot there, and I've seen at least 2 cars there every time I've gone by. So that's really actually the only kind of tight parking areas at Comfort Station.
Yeah, but again, there's like maybe 4 people camping here at this point, and we're on a weekend.
Yep.
So. Okay, so under miscellaneous, we like to talk about the sky usually. So we are the only campground that's open is the Beaver Dams campground, which basically the closest area for sky viewing is the beach, which is almost directly facing south. It is a very dark park, so we've never had a problem with sky like basically sky watching in general. Like if you're looking at the stars, we've taken some gorgeous photos of the Milky Way, and there was the Northern Lights that we talked about. So where it is south facing, it's not ideal for Northern Lights, but then again, if you're here during like a big show where it's just all around, then it is a great view. If it's not a huge show and you need north facing, it still works to go out to Sunset Rock. It is a bit of a hike because the roads are closed off to it during the winter. But if you can get out to Sunset Rock and look back at the campground, that is north facing view. We did get photos from that point in October as well. Basically, everywhere else in the park that has a great north facing view is blocked off or a big hassle to get to. Theoretically, you can ski the 4.7 kilometer loop at Blind Bay to get to north facing view, or hike to the lookout point, which is 3 kilometers. I don't think they want you doing that after dark, so probably not the best idea.
I certainly wouldn't want to do it carrying camera gear.
No, that sounds miserable. Plus, it's cold. So, the other thing to mention is Sunset Rock is also the point where the tree exists. So that is the windswept tree that's famous. That is the Killbear tree. So that is another thing that you can view in the winter. Something to mention under miscellaneous.
Definitely.
So we've got lots of information on our website about how to go Aurora hunting, how to photograph the northern lights, how to determine whether or not you're going to see them any particular night, where to go for that. So definitely check that out. If you click the link in our profile for the write-up on this campground, there are all those links there as well. Campground amenities and info is our next section. So the amenities that are available during the winter are very different than those in the summer months. We'll start with creature comforts, which is the comfort stations and washrooms and that kind of thing. Only one of the comfort stations is open, and it's the one in the Beaver Dams campground.
Yeah, you mentioned it's pretty close to all the sites. It's a real quick, easy walk. It's heated. There are flush toilets, hot showers, and laundry there. I did step in the laundry to take a look at the water availability, and it's a really nice laundry area. There's several washing machines and several dryers. I was really impressed.
It looked nice and modern, well kept too.
Yeah, definitely.
So anyways, there are also a couple vault toilets on either end of the campground if you just need to like do your business real quick. The first set as you're coming into the campground is a set of gender specific vault toilets. The women's one actually has a step down, but they were both plowed really well. Again, I didn't see any sand or anything, so just like navigate it carefully if there is ice on the ground. The other building, it's not a comfort station, but it looks like it's a nicer building. It doesn't look like an outhouse, but that is the barrier-free washroom stalls. It's 2 stalls of gender-neutral, wheelchair accessible toilets there. There's also toilets in the park office building for day users to use. So as far as other amenities go, the park store is closed during the winter months. You can get a few basic souvenirs at the front office, but you said it was just...
It looked like it was just stickers and maybe a water bottle or something.
Yeah, there wasn't a big selection there. The visitor center is also closed during the winter. It is open during Family Day weekend, which is in mid-February. It's actually next weekend from when we're doing this. And during March break. There's a few exhibits in the front office building. You'd shown some pictures. They weren't the museum quality like destination that the visitor center is.
Right. They're kind of interesting to look at if you're in line waiting to check in, but that's about it.
Yeah, don't make a trip of it. The next amenity is the EV charging station.
Yeah, there's a Flow model level 2 charger, so all vehicles can use it, and there's 2 spots available for it at the comfort station.
Yeah, so that was what you were ranting about earlier, where like half the spots are for the EV chargers, and of course there's none there.
Right.
The entire time there's none there.
And part of the issue was the snow was piled up really high in that area, so they had kept up that area. So I think that made the parking lot a little smaller right now.
Yeah. So in terms of the day use area, another amenity that's available during the summer, it's not really available during the winter. The road to it is a 1.4 kilometer long, which is now a walking and snowshoe trail that's completely ungroomed. So the ski trails are basically the day use area. So basically, if you're coming as a day user, it's probably for the ski trails or whatnot. You still have to buy you either have to have a campsite or a day use permit, which can be booked online or purchased on the spot at the campground office. If you have a provincial parks pass, you can get in for free, but you do need to register your license plate and basically get a day use pass. You just don't have to pay for it. In terms of rentals, Killbear Park does not offer any rental items, but it does recommend people go to the Georgian Nordic Activity Center, which is 35 kilometers away, if you want to rent skis, snowshoes, or fat bikes, or the White Squall Outdoor Center, which is in Parry Sound, 34 kilometers away, if you want snowshoe rentals. And that's that for amenities. So I guess campsites next. Okay, so let's talk about campsite details.
Yeah, so in the winter, there's one short section of the Beaver Dams area. There's up to 32 sites available in the winter, but the availability will actually vary during the season. So you got to keep an eye on that. They're all electrical sites. There's no roofed accommodations, and there's no backcountry sites available in winter. Each site has a fire pit and picnic table, but they're not shoveled out, and they kind of might be toppled. We saw some that were kind of just shoved around. I don't know if that's from the plowing. And even the access to the fire pits might be kind of iffy, again, due to the lack of proper plowing
Yeah,
there.
like some are shoveled out really well and others aren't. Uh, the only other thing to say is that you're really going to want to keep an eye on when you're booking, if you're booking an RV or if you really need a flat area, you're going to want to check the additional details for your site. There are moderate inclines, there are uneven inclines. So base or slope, I think they call it. Yeah,
Yep.
uneven slope and whatnot. They aren't kidding. so this is definitely very hilly. Our two sites were up on a hill, and it was kind of hard to get out of get out of the campground because our campsite, I should say, because of the hills. Um, I'm just trying to get up there where there's no sand. So if the level of the campsite is important to you, definitely just you really want to check that. So there are a few different winter activities that you can take part in at Killbear Provincial Park. I definitely recommend checking the snow report. We've got a link on the review for the Ontario Park Snow Report. It'll tell you the conditions of the trails and the snow depth and all that. So it's always good to know when you're doing winter camping. So first off, it's hiking and snowshoeing. Usually I'll cover hiking and snowshoeing as different sections, but basically all of the hiking trails in Killbear are double as snowshoeing trails, so I'll just talk about them together. First is Twin Points Trail. That's a 1.5 kilometer loop in the day use area. We've walked that in the fall. It's beautiful. It takes you up through a forest and over some rock formations and along Georgian Bay. Beautiful view. In order to get there, you have to do 1.4 kilometers on the park road, which is gated off and not plowed. So you can snowshoe in. It did not look like it was really. It was definitely snowed in, so I would probably wear snowshoes. I don't know how well snowshoes are going to work for the Twin Points Trail. Just having done it before, there were some sketchy areas that I can't picture bringing snowshoes up on. Anyway, the next trail is the Lookout Point Trail. We did that one in the fall also. It's a 3 kilometer long trail. It starts out over boardwalks. It takes you through a forested area and up onto a rocky area overlooking the Georgian Bay towards Parry Sound. It has its own parking lot, so it's not difficult to get to. Again, I'm not entirely sure what to make of that as a snowshoeing trail. Maybe it's just because I'm a beginner snowshoer and crippled. But I just remember when we got up over, when we got to that ledge, that it was pretty narrow there, and I'm just picturing, that was with hiking boots. That wasn't with big snowshoes. So it might get tricky up around the actual lookout point if you're in snowshoes. The Lighthouse Point Trail is indicated on the map, but it's only shown as a walking trail as far as the winter map goes. Now, the weird thing about that is if you park at the Discovery Center parking lot, you do have to walk or snowshoe or ski 2.6 kilometers to get out there. It is unplowed road. It is ungroomed. So I would lean towards the snowshoeing or skiing to get that far. The thing is, there's not really anything at Lighthouse Point unless they set something up for the winter. I don't know what you'd do with your skis or your snowshoes. That trail, it's short, but it is a little bit difficult. You do have to climb up over some rocks at some point, and I can't picture you. You're not going to ski that trail. You're
Right.
not going to. You're definitely not going to snowshoe like the far part of it, like over by the lighthouse. I think that would be incredibly dangerous and stupid. But then I can't picture carrying this stuff with me either. So using it as a walking trail seems like a bit of a weird prospect, just logistically. I don't know that they really thought that one out. If you have walked the Lighthouse Point Trail in the winter, I would love to hear from you and just hear how that went. But anyways, the next trail that is marked is the I guess the recreation trail. So the recreation trail is shown as being all the way from the front gate to the Lighthouse Point Trail. Now there's a 1.2 kilometer section between Blind Bay and the Discovery Center, which is not marked as being for walking or snowshoeing, and it is marked as being for skiing. So I think you're not allowed to walk there, so you're probably going to have to walk on the road at that section. But once you get to the gate that blocks off the rest of the campground, you can walk on the road there. So it's a little bit of a mess. There is also the trail to Kilcorsey Bay, which is a 0.3 kilometer walk from the front office area straight out through Kilcorsey Bay campground to Kilcorsey Bay beach. You actually did that walk.
Yeah, so one of the things I'll note is it almost looks like they groom them to some extent because snowshoes leave a very distinct pattern, and this was more like a path, as if you had a heavy sled that you dragged along there.
And they're not really wide enough for snowshoes, I don't think.
I think it would have been. I could tell where people had snowshoed on there,
Okay.
but the path was kind of nice. I walked it, and it was packed down enough that I didn't sink down. But if you went off that path, you sink down.
But so was it wider than the path that, because there is a walking path that goes from the comfort station down straight down to the beach. That has kind of a packed
Right.
set trail, but that is not wide enough for snowshoes.
Agreed. This was slightly wider,
Okay.
so I think it was barely wide enough for snowshoes, but I think that was what the intent was.
Yeah, and so the walk from the comfort station down to the beach is not listed on the map as anything, but it seems to be a very popular walk. That's about 0.2 kilometers, I think it was.
Yeah.
And that has like this pack trail, but as Porter was saying, like if you step off it, you are stepping off it. It got pretty deep. Like it was safe to walk on that. I kind of put my hip out because I slipped off the side at one point, and it gets pretty deep. But it's a nice little walk. It is downhill, so it's a bit of effort. There's both times this year and last year there was kind of like snow mounds at the end that you had to kind of climb up over. Not huge, but like I had issues both times. So yeah, so to keep that in mind. So a few notes on the trails in general. You're allowed to hike, fat bike, snowshoe, and walk your dogs on each of these trails, but you're not allowed to do any of that on the skiing specific trails, whether those are groomed or not. Not sure what happened with Harold Point. He's going to get to that in a minute. But yeah, you're not supposed to walk on any of those. Snowshoers are asked to not use cleated snowshoes on any of the bare or minimally covered boardwalks just to prevent damaging them. There seems to be plenty of snow out there during our stay this time, so that's not really an issue, but I'm sure at some points in the winter, there's probably not a whole lot of snow there. And then beyond the trails that I've talked about, there's snowshoers are invited to go make their own trails. So as long as you're not on a ski trail, you can kind of do whatever you want. So yeah, and the area between the comfort station and the beach looks really nice for doing snowshoeing. Yeah. And if I was a little bit more mobile this time, I would love to go snowshoeing out to, like, I think going down to the beach and to the left out to
the tree
and the Sunset Rocks would be a really nice snowshoeing trip. It's really pretty down there.
It is.
Anyway, enough about that. Let's talk about this cross-country skiing, which you got into this time.
I did. So the bulk of the park is closed off for the vehicles in the winter, and most of that is turned into cross-country skiing. There's 3 campgrounds that are designated for skiing. Overall,
and they are gated off to everything else.
Right. Overall, there's 12 to 15 kilometers of track set ski trails. That's kind of depending on where you're looking for this information. Plus, there's 4.7 kilometers of groom trails, but you kind of have to take the grooming with a grain of salt.
The groom trails for skate skiing specifically.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. So the name trails, we've got the Blind Bay Loop. This is on the outer edge of the Blind Bay Campground. That's 4.7 kilometers groomed, and that one's designated for classic skiing and skate skiing. It's the only trail that is designated for skate skiing, and it's the only campground trail that has its own parking lot. This is the one that I did, and it was really nice. I didn't see any evidence of skate skiing on there, but several people had been classic skiing on it, which made it for a nice smooth run. Now, this is the second time I've done any kind of significant cross-country skiing.
Yeah, we just bought our skis this year for what was it? Not Boxing Day. No, I got it on clearance somewhere. I can't remember. Was that end of season?
It was end of season.
But yeah,
last
it
year.
was basically as a result of going to Arrowhead last year. We're like, oh, we need to start skiing. So we finally got around to it this winter.
Yeah, so I found that following the tracks that had been used by several people was a lot easier than my last time where I was following a groom trail, but nobody had been on it.
Well, it had just snowed also.
Yeah.
When that was at McGregor, and it was there was a lot of snow that week.
There was.
So yeah, anyway, stuff we're learning as we go, I guess.
Yeah, as a beginner, I will note that I would call this one moderate because Killbear is hilly. It's just what it is. So even though I'm on the campground trail or the roads, it's still going up and down.
That was a pretty chaotic campground. I don't know if you remember the first time we were here, but we did the drive-through to figure it out, and it was like there's a boat launch down there that is the most chaotic, like janky boat launch I have ever seen in my life. And just getting down there, like there's a sign there that says like, what was it, like make sure it's functional or something. It was like check your. You remember?
I can't remember how it's phrased, but it's basically check the condition of the boat launch before approaching or something.
Yeah, it was like don't trust this basically. But the thing is that the campground road itself there was sharp turns, like very sharp turns, to the point where I was wondering, how are you getting a boat down to that boat launch? Because we have a dinky little 17-foot or something, little boat. I can't imagine just our little SUV and our little boat. I couldn't imagine driving it through there. So it must have been pretty twisty turny as the skiing, but it was. I remember there were some steep hills there.
There were a couple steep hills in particular that were labeled as such, and as a beginner, I was like, "Ooh, this looks fun," but I don't want to fall. And a couple of them had a fairly steep hill with a turn on the bottom, and I'm not really that good at turning at speed.
And you saw some indications of.
Yeah, I was starting downhill on one spot, and I could see ahead where somebody else had wiped out on the curb, and I'm like, "Uh-oh, that's not good." I did manage to make it without falling at all, so that is awesome. I've probably set myself up to fall for next time, though.
Yeah, talk big and you're going to pay for it.
Exactly.
So then scenery.
It was nice scenery. There was one part in particular where it's a bit elevated and you had a view of the lake. There was a few views of the lake, but since the lake is covered in snow, it's not particularly scenic.
Very white.
It's very white. So it looks nice, but it's mostly the skiing through the woods that is nice, to be honest.
So we don't have a ton of experience at Killbear in terms of the winter camping, and this is our first time actually doing the skiing, but I will note that between the parking lot being there, and it's the only one that has its own parking lot, and the fact that we've actually seen people on that trail, I think, from what I can tell, that looks like it's probably like the popular skiing trail here. Because a lot of the other areas that seem designated for skiing don't seem very used, and we have seen people on there. You saw tracks on there. Like it's clear that one's actually getting used. So I don't know if that's overall or if it's just during our 2 trips, but I will mention that does seem to be popular.
Yeah, when I pulled into the parking lot, there were 4 other vehicles. They were obviously at the skiing part because they weren't over by the trail. So,
anyways, other trails.
Yeah, moving on. The recreation trail is a mixed-use trail from summer that goes along the main road throughout the park. It starts at the Blind Bay parking lot. It's 3.8 kilometers to the Lighthouse Point Trail. It's marked as groomed by signs at the site. This is kind of debatable, though. We had seen it not being groomed.
On both trips, like both
Yeah.
trips, we got a photo of a sign saying groomed skiing trail. It was not groomed. And we haven't had any snow all week. Well, I mean, we had like a dusting, but nothing that would justify it looking like that hadn't been touched in weeks.
Yeah, I suspect they just aren't grooming it very often, and a bit of snow just kind of covers it up. And
Well, it's probably a bit of snow and then a bit of snow and a bit of snow
right,
because it doesn't look like it got dumped on. It just looks like this was groomed at probably some point in a few weeks and
yeah,
not.
right.
It
So
might not be getting used. I don't know, but it was definitely not what I would call groomed either time. This time or a year ago.
yeah, and this one's designated for classic skiing. Uh, Moving on to the Herald Point Loop. This is a 1 kilometer loop around the Herald Point campground.
Shocking.
Yeah. The closest parking lot is the Lookout Point Trail, designated for classic skiing. This one was not groomed at all. We saw a single set of footprints going out there, and that was it. I didn't go all that far out to it, but I was
Well,
kind
I
of
mean, what are you
confused.
going to do? Walk in and then put your skis down like half a kilometer out or something? That seems silly. I don't think
Yeah,
people are skiing on that trail.
yeah, I was confused basically.
Not supposed to be walking on that at all because that. And I think that trail is probably why it says like you can't walk on ski trails whether they're groomed or not
Okay.
because it's designated as a trail, but it's clearly not in this. And this wasn't even like the other one. This had not been groomed. Period.
Yep. So there's also the Granite Saddle Loop. You want to park at the Discovery Center lot for this one. It's a 1.6 kilometer loop around the Granite Saddle campground.
Creative.
Yeah, but you have to ski 1.3 kilometers along the road to get to the start of the trail, so it ends up to be quite a bit longer by the time you get back.
2.6 kilometers on top of the 1.6 to do your 1.6.
Exactly. So I didn't do it. I can't comment on the condition on that one, but it's available,
I'm going to
supposedly.
assume not groomed. If Herald Point was not groomed and that's out an unplowed road, I'm going to assume not groomed.
Yeah.
Anyway, a few things to know about the ski trails is that some are groomed flat, like they've been raked, like the what was the name of the one you did there, the Blind Bay one. Some are track set, some are not groomed at all. The map page, the back of the page has some trail details. None of it says which ones are groomed or groomed to how. It's just these are track set, or it's just these are classic. This one is skate ski. Kind of chaos to figure out where you're going. If you need track set, you might need to ask ahead of time. You'd actually talked about that one was totally not groomed at all.
And
Oh, go ahead.
skiing on ungroomed areas is not fun. So I took a little side
Well, I
branch.
bet it's fun to people that know what they're doing.
Well, maybe, but I took a little side branch out to view the water a little bit closer, and somebody else had already skied it, but no actual grooming there, and it was pretty rough, and you kind of sink down and kind of it's unstable, and as a beginner, it's kind of
daunting.
Yeah, so that doesn't sound fun. The grooming was actually quite nice.
So one thing that I want to note is that nowhere, and now I didn't look super close at the maps. Because there were little trail maps at the trail in some places, but I'm kind of doubting it's there either. There was no mention anywhere on the maps, on the website, and the trail about the skill level of each trail.
Yeah.
So you're going in kind of blind with that. Now we had been here before, so I kind of had some kind of idea of, that specifically that Blind Bay is pretty chaotic because that stood out to me as just being kind of a mess to drive through. So I assume if it's a mess to drive through, it's going to be a mess to ski through. I didn't remind him of this when I sent him out skiing, by the way. Stuff like Herald Point or Granite Saddle, like I remember driving down there, but I couldn't tell you because we were in a car. So it's not like I was looking at it with an eye to skiing. So I mean, there could have been a big hill. I wouldn't know from summer camping. I didn't pay enough attention to that. So it would be nice as beginner skiers to know this is difficult, this is not difficult, or even, honestly, even just a bit of information like this one will give you a nice view of whatever, or this one takes you through a forest, or I feel like they put a lot of effort into hiking trail descriptions on the site, and there's no information beyond distance for the ski trails. Another thing to note is that we didn't see any warm-up shelters, and there's none indicated on the map. So the closest thing to that is there's a fire at that in front of the park office. I don't even know how often that's running, so who knows? If you need to stay warm, I would dress warm. You should dress warm anyways, to be quite honest. But and as we'd mentioned earlier, if a trail is designated as a ski trail, you're not allowed to walk, snowshoe, fat bike, or bring dogs onto the trail at all, whether it's groomed or not. And you're going to want to bring your own skis because the closest place to rent skis is 35 kilometers away. So
yeah, just a note on how the difficulty rating is. I was unprepared for the hills on going up because the people in front of me had obviously done this like
skate ski.
Yeah, like a skate ski, make a V pattern to get up there. And I tried to do that and I was awful at it. So I had to brute force it and just use a whole bunch of arm strength for it, which was
That's
fine.
honestly probably something we should work on, though.
It probably is,
know?
but if you're a beginner, just be aware that some of these hills are a little challenging and, just be aware of that.
And we should know we are like self-taught beginners, so we didn't even look at really like YouTube or anything. So I'm sure there's really basic ways of doing this, and we're probably feeling our way around and not doing things the best, but we're learning. So
yeah, and this
take what we say about skiing with a big grain of salt because we have absolutely no idea what we're doing.
I agree, but I think there's going to be a fair amount of people in that position who are like, let's give this a try and just do it.
So speaking of let's give this a try, fat biking is another activity you can do here, sort of. So fat biking is allowed in the park, but they don't have any designated biking trails for them, and they don't rent the fat bike. So they mention you can do it, and then there's not a whole lot you can do with it. There is some contradictory information out there on the fat biking. So according to the paper map, fat bikers are welcome, but you have to stay off the ski trails, and that's all that they say about it. The actual map doesn't even mention fat biking. The PDF map that they have on their website does have fat biking color coded as where you can do it. And those areas it's the road out to the day use area, so that 1.4 kilometer end to end, which is unplowed, ungroomed, and you're sharing it with walking and snowshoeing. You can fat bike on the entirety of the parkway, all the way from the park office out to Lighthouse Point. So the first 2.3 kilometers of that is plowed road. That's the main road. You're sharing it with cars. Basically, I don't think anyone's going to walk. Oh, no, we did see people walking on that. Anyway, at the point that gets gated off towards going towards Lighthouse Pit Trail, there's another 2.6 kilometers of unplowed, ungroomed road. And you're sharing that with walkers and I shouldn't say walkers. We're after just seeing a whole bunch of Walking Dead, so it's like you're sharing this with walkers. If you don't want to bring more than your fat bike, bring your club. I don't know. This is stupid. I'm dumb. I'm sorry. It's been a long weekend. So anyways, you're sharing that with hikers and people who are walking and whatnot. So I don't know, fat biking sounds kind of fun, but if you don't have one, you have to drive 35 kilometers away to a place to rent it, and then it doesn't make sense to come back here because the place that rents it actually has like designated really nice fat biking trails.
Right.
So the idea of, because you're paying hourly for it, right?
Yeah.
So why, I don't know why you'd rent one and then come back to the park if they've got it all set up there. It seems kind of silly. Anyway, birding, wildlife, and nature.
This is going to be a really long section here.
Okay, so I also feel like we're setting. No, you know what? No, it is kind of crappy here today at this day. But we have the additional like bar set, I guess, that the last couple of weeks by our house, we've just seen a ton of hawks. Like every day, we've seen multiple hawks. There was a golden eagle on the side of the road just staring at us from like throwing distance. Like, I mean, we can go to this park that's 5 minutes from our house, and there's hawks and merlins and the juvenile bald eagles. So we've had a lot of birding lately, and we've gotten really spoiled. So then we come here to Killbear. Now, driving to Killbear, I thought it was weird that I looked at the Audubon app because I'm like, oh, I wonder what birds have been seen here. There was like nothing. There was like 3 entries in the last month, which seems weird for a provincial park because you'd think there'd be tons. We found out why that was when we got here.
Yeah, the only wildlife I saw was a crow.
That was trolling our cats.
Yeah.
So apparently they get owls and eagles here and weasels. I might have seen weasel tracks through the campground. There was something that looked a little, it wasn't a dog, it wasn't a rabbit. I'm not sure. So if they get weasels, there's probably a weasel, but like we certainly didn't see a weasel.
Yep.
We didn't see any of the deer that we saw in October that were like right on the side of the road.
I did see deer prints on the cross country skiing trail. It was a rude deer that was walking along the trail, even though you're not supposed to walk on those trails.
Yeah.
But
We
that was
didn't
kind of
read the
fun.
information.
Right. That was kind of fun to see. And I did hear chickadees.
Hear them though. See,
Yeah.
chickadees were, and again, this is another thing to like compare everything against McGregor Park. At McGregor Point, the chickadees, they are very friendly and very outgoing, and they will come and they will sit on your hand, and they're super cute, very, very friendly. We didn't see any chickadees here. You could hear them from the road, and
Yep.
you could hear them on the trail, but we didn't see a single chickadee. We saw a crow, and that was it. I'm a little salty because I really wanted to see owls.
It would have been
You
nice.
know, I miss Bowman
Right.
the barred owl. Oh, he was cute. He came visit us when we were staying at
6 Mile.
Lake. Yeah. Oh, he was cute. That was really sweet. Anyway, next up is ice skating. So there's no ice skating. We're just mentioning this because these were keywords in our review that we have to address. So we're going to address it just in case anyone else is wondering. There is no ice skating or ice trail or anything. There's no rink at Killbear. There are notices about how there's no safe ice at the park. So I would not plan on wild skating on the lake either. It is about an hour and a half away to Arrowhead, so if you're into wild ice, you can go there. Now, I know technically trail ice is not wild ice. Wild ice is generally out on a lake or something. But trust me, after going to Arrowhead last year, that was wild ice. You cannot convince me that was not wild ice. It was like skating on baklava, and I will never do that again. So yeah, wild ice at Arrowhead. Anyway, on that note, ice fishing is another thing that there is no mention of ice fishing for the park, but given the warnings about ice not being safe, I'm going to go ahead and assume you're not supposed to ice fish here either.
So I actually saw ice fishermen when I was cross country skiing.
Oh, really?
Saw them from quite a distance.
Okay.
And when I was at the comfort station, I saw somebody coming back with obviously ice fishing gear on a sled
Really?
going back to his car. So again, there are signs saying the ice is not safe. I would trust the signage and not necessarily trust that since people are out there, it must be safe, because that's not always true.
I'm probably going to insult some people here, but I feel like if you're the type of person to go out on ice in winter and sit out there in the cold, you're probably not 100% sane.
I mean,
so I don't know. I see those videos. Do you remember when we were living in Minneapolis and the what was it? It wasn't Lake Minnetonka. The one that was like Calhoun, where there'd be people out there as the ice was melting and the shacks and whatnot.
Oh, the shacks sinking into the water.
Yeah.
It's a thing that happens every year because people just.
That's what I think of when I think ice fishing. So I guess the fact that you saw ice fishing when there's signs everywhere saying that there's no safe ice here kind of doesn't surprise me. I am so sorry if you ice fish. I'm sure you're totally sane. Anyway, next up is the Discovery Program. So just like most parks, the Discovery Program at Killbear is limited to the summer months, and we didn't see anything about any programming here. Pinery actually had some during the winter, and I know Algonquin does something, I think, but
that's really cool.
There's nothing here.
Right.
Niantic games. Yeah,
there's a few Pokestops around, and like you mentioned, we had good reception, so we were able to do kind of the bare minimum.
The dailies, yeah. There's one at the comfort station here. That's the only one in the campground. There's a few sprinkled throughout the park, but they're few and far between, and your best bet is the Discovery Center parking lot.
Yeah, if there's a big event, this is not the place to go for it. But if you kind of want to keep your streak up or something, you can do that.
You can get it done, yeah. So I guess the last up is just our final thoughts.
Yep.
What are you thinking on Killbear in the winter specifically?
And that's the thing. Winter specifically, I'm not a big fan of Killbear, in particular because, like you mentioned earlier, it's going to be compared to McGregor Point Provincial Park, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So although we love the park, it's beautiful, there's a lot of cool stuff here, the winter doesn't offer us enough to want to come back.
So I think for me, the big part of the thing is, so I'm looking at this as a disabled person, but as a gaining mobility back disabled person, right? And I think that as is, the park setup is a little nonsensical. Like I was saying, just having to go over ungroomed trails for several kilometers to get to an easy walking trail
Yeah.
is nonsensical. And to go that far to do a walking trail that you don't really want to be carrying your equipment for, that's nonsensical, you know. I wonder how much of that is just finding their groove. You know what I mean? Like, especially where there's different trail maps. I have to wonder if one of our maps is from this year and one's from last year, and if they're just kind of finding what works. Because I mean, it's gotta be a learning process, right? And this is their third year, so um, I don't know if I'm giving a whole lot of leeway just because like we love Killbear in general, you know. So I think for me, I think I'd like to come back, but in a few years, like when I'm a bit more mobile, when we have a bit more experience with skiing. I think those people that are experienced with skiing are going to get a lot more out of winter camping here than those that are beginners. Partially because if you can handle long distances, if you can handle more trying conditions, you know, a lot of the things that are either annoyances or deal breakers for us just don't even apply. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yep.
So, um, there are some logistical issues here. There are some maintenance issues here. Um, I love Killbear though, so I think I'd give it a chance in a few years.
I can see that. I would come back in a few years as well. Like you said, they're finding their groove. Maybe they still need some more funding and equipment and staff training to get everything up and going. Hopefully, they'll change the situation around and make it a little easier to access some of these
They
trails.
need a new cartographer.
They do.
Honestly, Ontario Parks, if you are listening to this, if you're watching this video, if you read our blogs, please get a good cartographer to do all of your parks and have them work well with the person who does the trail descriptions and stuff. There is so much contradictory information between trails and maps and descriptions and everything on the across the sites. Like there's no consistency. It's so annoying. You'll bleep that, right?
Yes.
I'm
It,
sorry.
and honestly, one of my annoyances, I feel like they should put their maintenance sheds and things like that on there. So when you're looking and you tell me take the second right, it's not like, oh wait, no, that one's not on the map.
Yeah, there's like information left off the map.
Yeah.
So, but basically, you know, I think there's a good chance if we were to look at the trail map online next year, maybe part of that road's open, or maybe the trail isn't even on there. Like maybe they'll just leave Lighthouse Point off because it doesn't make sense. So I'm giving a lot of leeway for it being, you know, learning experience.
Yeah.
But overall, like if you like camping, you know, there's very few sites to fight for, basically.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I guess I don't know what else to say. I'd say as an experience here, this time was a better experience than last time.
Yep.
Definitely some issues. Definitely some beauty to it too. You
Yeah.
know.
I
Uh,
had a lot of fun, and I enjoyed the stay, but I think I'm not interested in coming back this year. Like you said, we'll
let's
try
get a bit
again.
more in shape and get a bit more used to skiing and stuff, and I think then we'll have a very different time. You know, like I think if you're not a skier, there's not a whole lot to do here because, like, who wants to drive this far out to just walk on campground roads? You know what I mean?
Yep,
So,
I
yeah,
agree.
it's if you're into skiing for sure, this would be great. You know, as long as you can deal with maybe plowing out your own campsite.
Yeah, so check out all this information on our blog. We've got it all written down.
Tons of photos.
Yep, tons of photos and everything. Um, Subscribe to our newsletter on our website. Like and subscribe to this video, and you'll get contacted whenever we release new information. But that's all we send. We don't send a bunch of spam.
We don't send any spam. Let's be real here.
That's right.
But anyways, and also on this site, we should say on this during our stay here, it was pretty gray. Last time we had beautiful lighting, but we didn't take many photos because we were only there for the one night. But I have a ton of gorgeous Northern Lights photos from
Definitely.
Killbear.
Yep.
They are not from during our stay now. They are from October, which is not technically winter camping, but Northern Lights is generally seen as a winter thing anyway, so I think that's fair. What I am doing on that post though is I'm only sharing the views that you could see during the winter camping. So where we do have different locations that we go to for north views and stuff during the on season, I'm just not going to bother sharing those on on this post because it does not. It's misleading, I think. Anyway,
All right.
that's all I wanted to say. I think that's it. So next up, we're going to Arrowhead again.
Yes, we are.
So we will see you guys after that.
TLDR.